Hello, everyone, and happy holidays. Welcome to our first annual holiday spectacular episode of Banking Matters. I'm your host, Ashton Woodling. Joining me today is Craig Ostbo. As CEO of O Strategic Branding, formerly Koopman Ostbo, in Portland, Oregon, Craig Ostbo brings more than 30 years of branding and marketing experience in the natural, organic, and sustainable food and beverage consumer products category and the financial services sector. Craig has provided strategic branding direction for numerous consumer product brands, including Bob's Red Mill Natural Foods, Kettle Chips, Fran's Bakery, Rogue Creamery, Umpqua Dairy, Beaverton Foods, Smucker Natural Foods, Kroger's Naturally Preferred brand, to name a few. In the financial services sector, Craig has provided branding and marketing counsel for Mortgage Market, Point West Credit Union, Lone Star, Foundation Home Lending, Pacific West Bank, and Pacers Mortgage. An enthusiastic supporter of local business and entrepreneurs, Craig has spent the past 16 years as a member of the board of directors of the regional business bank, Pacific West Bank, where he also serves as a board member of PWB's digital division, FinTech. With a degree in international business from Linfield University, Craig serves on Linfield's Business Advisory Council, providing strategic direction, advocacy, and development for the institution's business programs. He's a member of the advisory board of Portland State University's Center for Retail Leadership, where he serves as an adjunct professor for PSU's Summer Business Institute, Consumer Products, Goods, Strategic Marketing, International Business, and International Marketing. As a member of Oregon State University's Food Science and Technology Board of Advisors, Craig provides branding, marketing, and communications counsel on behalf of this preeminent program. As an entrepreneur, Craig and his business partner, his son Christian, who is both a trained chef, a certified personal trainer, and a certified nutritionist, and their manufacturing business partner, Highland Laboratories, are about to release their first product in the health, wellness, and sports nutrition category, Love Motion number 9. Transitioning his former vocation as a professional musician, drummer, producer in Los Angeles into his avocation, Craig enjoys playing over 50 concerts a year locally, regionally, and nationally for Petty Fever, a Tom Petty tribute band. Petty Fever has been recognized as a 2-time winner of the Los Angeles Music Awards Tribute Band of the Year and 2-time winner of the Las Vegas Fame Awards Outstanding International Tribute Artist. Craig, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you.
Well, I'm excited too, but now I'm exhausted. Just here, I think our time is done.
You are well accomplished and well established, sir. That took a minute.
It did take a minute. I'm going, maybe I should have sent the brief bio.
No, I want to hear all of it. Oh my gosh, your background is vast.
And it's even more odd how I got into banking when you think about that, because that's from a professional musician to where I ended up in the banking world on the board is such an unusual path, I'm sure, for most listening here.
Yes, perhaps. Please tell me, because not only do I want to hear, but you have to figure that there are lots of musicians who are eager to break into the banking sector. So tell me, how do you do that? How did that happen?
It really happened organically, like most things. It was really kind of an odd set of circumstances. I was touring, playing in Los Angeles, living in Los Angeles, recording a lot of albums, doing that kind of work. Albums, for those of you that don't know, are vinyl. Well, I guess you do know what vinyl is now, because vinyl is rather hot. You say CD, they might not know. But nonetheless, that was, if you will, at that point in time. And during that time, I really had a desire. Audio and video were merging in the digital domain. It was just beginning to happen. MIDI, those of you that play music will understand what I'm talking about. And, you were using digital means to record video as opposed to analog. And all this was happening. And I wanted to write and produce music for movies, for TV, for certainly commercials, long form video. So I convinced myself that I needed to stop touring and stop playing in nightclubs and get a normal job. I guess is what musicians called it back in the day. And my sister talked me into going to this temp firm that stuck me at this wonderful, wonderful place. I had no idea where I was going, called First Interstate Services, which was the wholly owned subsidiary of First Interstate Bank. And they were the entire data processing arm. And they were really inventing, creating ATM technology. Because back then, there is no internet. So how do you have up to the second ATM technology? Well, you use 8-inch floppy disks that you send all over the country, but that's another story. So it was there that I kind of fell into banking, if you will, with that job. The best thing that ever happened to me, though, there is that, okay, so I started where Jack Welch started, in the mailroom. So in the mailroom, you have all the company supplies. The best thing that happened to me, that there was a senior vice president. She was really cute. And she would come by all the time to get Ticonderoga number 2s. I thought, man, that goes through a lot of pencils. Well, it took me a while. As a drummer, remember, I'm a little slow on the uptake. It took me a while to figure out she really didn't need pencils. And this September, we celebrate 40 years of marriage. Somehow I got the senior vice president. And when I say I married way above my pay grade, boy, do I mean it, way above my pay grade. But from there, I fell into marketing and branding. It was far more of a natural course from that point on, but was really, and the beauty, I never had to stop playing. I play to this day. As you know, I could stay a professional musician, but I could really focus on a new career, marketing and strategic branding. And that's how it all happened.
I love it. I love your hearing about banking being a love story too. That's perfect. Ticonderoga's number 2.
Ticonderoga number 2.
Perfect. Oh, that's awesome. So now you have found yourself on the board of Pacific West Bank. How did you make that transition?
You know, a very, very close friend of mine and a group of actually individuals that I knew really felt that the community banking system here in Portland, or certainly in our area, that just a bit south of Portland, we're in the Portland DMA, so we're part of the Portland market, but we're in the Westland areas where we originally started. Lake Oswego, Westland, that area, for those that know the Northwest or know the Portland market. And they really wanted to supply businesses in the area the opportunity to grow their businesses with a business bank that was really focused on them. And they asked me originally in 2004 as a de novo when they started if I would join, and things, I was so busy with my, what you would call ad agency, marketing communications firm, where we completely specialize in the natural, organic, and sustainable products market and built many of those brands that you mentioned. I was so busy with that in 2004. I asked the chairman of the board if I could pass momentarily. He came back in 2007 and said, okay, it's long enough. Will you join and bring that strategic branding council to our board and to our clients, et cetera? And I was happy to do so. And I've been there ever since.
I love that. So you bring 2 really unique perspectives that we don't often get to hear about here on Banking Matters, or even in my life as a compliance professional, right? Rarely do I get to hear the board member's perspective. Rarely do I hear someone talk about strategic branding. So this is wonderful that we can kind of marry these 2 topics from a banking lens. So I mentioned I'm in compliance. Formerly, I was in audit. So I feel like I provide a lot of reports that go to the board. Tell me, as a board member, you're provided with this packet, right, of all of this paper and all of this data. What do you do with that? What do you look for? What interests you as a board member?
You know, that's really a great question. And I will tell you, at Pacific West Bank, you would often be in the boardroom with us for that presentation. It gives us the opportunity to dig deeper into your research, to ask you why you feel, if you're compelled towards a particular answer or a particular direction, we're able to speak to you directly about that and what motivates you to that direction, and what data did you use to arrive at that direction. So I think maybe it would certainly be a misnomer at our bank, maybe at a lot of banks, where it is people like yourself that are coming into the boardroom, making those reports. We're having a chance to interact with you. Certainly, there are certain decisions we have to make solely as a board, and we're charged as a board to make that, absent, if you will, of anyone but board members. But you're far more powerful than you think in a compliance capacity. And I think I can relate that not only to the board, but also to marketing. Um, Marketers, one of the greatest thing that I believe they do is they get outside the box. But how can you get outside the box if you don't know what the box is? Compliance paints a very clear box for you. And we're dealing in do I need to tell you, a highly regulated world? I know it's surprise. Um, we really need that advice to understand, the guardrails. And especially in marketing and branding, we want to understand. Now, I'll be honest, my job is always to push up against those guardrails. I want to get outside the box. But I can tell you at our bank, it is our compliance person, Dana Lawrence, who I absolutely adore, who I go to and say, hey, is this pushing it a little too far? If we're talking about something far more strategic for the bank, we do not micromanage our team and what they do. We macromanage. Our job is to really understand what they're doing, but certainly we offer advice and counsel. And I find it so often how important compliance is to providing that advice and counsel, because, you can have a tendency to think, well, we can say this or we can do that. And let me just say this. Are there clear guidelines? Of course there are. But guidelines are meant to be interpreted. I think my father's, one of his biggest rules to me was, rules are made to be broken intelligently. You need to be pretty damn intelligent to break a rule with the FDIC, and we've never done that, by the way. Let me just say that. We've not done that, but you certainly need to think that through. And so I want to make an argument that if you're in compliance and you've never had a marketing person into your meetings, the meetings you're doing, you need to invite them in. And if you're in marketing and you're not inviting compliance into your meetings, especially some of your creative strategic meetings where you're really thinking about conceptually how you want to get across an idea, please invite them into the meeting. I know you think they're there to tell you no. They're not. They'll tell you yes more than you know if you just invite them in. And I think that's one of the challenges maybe we have in banking is a marketer's best friend is going to be the compliance person. I mean that sincerely. And I've certainly found that holds true at Pacific West Bank.
I can't say that enough. And actually, I had a conversation this morning. So it's funny you say that about inviting a bank's marketing officer to be a member of their compliance committee. So I totally agree. They need to hear the conversations. And for me, I think the best thing about compliance is knowing that there's a why, right? We generally have an event that precipitates a rule change. So if I can understand the why, I can understand sort of the intent of the rule, and then it makes more sense. And so I think sometimes that's what's missing between compliance and marketing is marketing folks are given rules or said no, or either change this, but without the why. And so I think when they're involved, to your point, they can understand the why and hear about that. And make more.
Indeed, and now more importantly than probably ever, when you think about the proliferation of BaaS, banking as a service, of embedded finance, of the myriad of different banks and neobanks and all that going on, and you get the idea that perhaps you could do what they're doing, forgetting that they are tied to an FDIC bank. There's a lot of things you can think maybe that you could do because they're doing, but you can't necessarily do that. And you need that strong counsel and advice in the boardroom with you.
Yeah, I agree. It's not always a level playing field, and that's kind of rough. So you're a board member, you're sitting there, you're receiving your presentation, right, from our friends in the compliance department. What is your goal as a board member? Like what are you looking at to ensure that you've fulfilled your duty as a board member and that the bank succeeds?
Great question. I'll tell you, it started at the very beginning. I was very, very fortunate that in 2007, when I said that I would come on board with the bank, it was right at the point that OBA, Oregon Bankers Association, was putting on director's school. And so we went to director school. And one of the first thing they reinforced, and there were individuals from the FDIC, they're saying, you must think for yourself. Just because everyone in the room says, I, and your vote may not swing that vote, that everyone in the room needs to hear why you disagree, or maybe why it's not necessarily a disagreement. It's just that you don't believe that maybe it's gone as deep as it should go, whatever policy you're voting on. Have your own voice, because you're not of value to the other board members unless you have a voice. And they'll be able to put two and two together and say, well, he's coming out of the marketing background, he's coming out of the branding background. This happens all the time. I'm usually the one standing up and saying, hey, let's talk about the PR ramifications of this. Let's talk about how quickly the street gets this message if we don't think about the story up front and why we're doing it. So those things happen all the time. So I think it's really, really important. And it was one of the first things taught to me in 2007 at director's school by OBA. You're your own person, have your own voice, and don't just say yay or nay because everyone is. Give your opinion, because everyone learns from that opinion.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. We're talking about not just going with the flow.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, so you're looking for things that would help the bank succeed, be safe, make good choices, right? So what do you value most in a presentation to the board? When someone makes their report to you, what helps get the message home for you? Is there any common theme there?
Well, certainly at Portland State University, we talk to all the, you'll often hear this from a marketing student. Yeah, I kind of went into marketing. I was in the accounting program and I don't like numbers, so I came into marketing. We go, whoa, time out. Marketing is nothing but numbers. Numbers drive every decision we make. So along those lines, I love when hardcore data is presented that helps us understand where they're arriving at this conclusion or what they're presenting. Because from a marketing and branding perspective, that's what we deal with. That's where we're making the decisions. We forget often that even a bank is driven by consumer need and consumer desire and the consumer's journey, where they're going. There's only one reason that Starbucks is a bank: consumers. There's only one reason Apple is a bank: consumers. I know they may have had a brilliant idea and they're one of the richest companies in the world, and yes, they could do it, but it is consumer driven. And so when someone comes in the room and they present a concept based on data, especially if it's in consideration of the client base that we're serving and it's data that's been conducted with them, or it's where research is leaning, I'm all over that. That's what I want to know. Where is this really being driven by those that we serve? Because we have a fiduciary responsibility to the FDIC and the insurance fund. We have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders who trust us to make the appropriate decision. And I believe we have a fiduciary responsibility to all the stakeholders, the very consumers, the very businesses that we're helping enable and empower, perhaps to reach their startup dreams, or to perhaps open a new location, or whatever it is that they may do. We are challenged to think on their behalf. And so anytime you walk into that room and you bring real data of real research speaking about what you've discovered about where the market is moving, where the consumer is moving, I love that. I love that.
Real data. That makes perfect sense. And once again, you've managed to make this all make sense, right? A marketing guy is a bank director. It just seems like that's the perfect marriage. One last question from the board members' perspective before I kind of pivot. And this is totally selfish. Okay. So every year I help teach this national audit school, and we provide advice for giving your reports to the boards. And one thing we always say, and I want to know from the board's perspective, like from your perspective, is this even accurate, or am I totally off base? We say use lots of pictures, like pictures and graphs to get your point across. Does that help?
Oh, if you saw me present to whether that be the students or speaking engagement or whatever else, my PowerPoints are nothing but pictures.
Yes.
I never put words. I never put data. Well, one, I want you looking at me so I can deliver the point doing that, but I want the picture to represent 1,000 words. And based on where the audience is at, I can go where I need to go. And I love that when someone comes up, often we get in a room and someone starts talking, you've got data in front of you and you're looking down. You're not looking at the presenter. You're not really seeing their intent and how hard they worked on this or what they're really passionate about, why they believe this. I'd much rather have pictures and then be able to see the presenter as they're talking to me about what they've discovered, because it helps me fire back other questions that I may have on that. So personally, I'm all over that. I'm all about that. You would be very successful in a room delivering a report to me using pictures, if you will. So not selfish at all, by the way. Thank you for asking that. Yeah.
Yes, I'm so happy that we have been educating properly. I wasn't wrong.
Well, think about this. How often, I remember I had a unbelievable CMO who was also, she taught financial management for non-financial managers. And the things that she would say is, I go into a room, there's 20 people, we're there together for a weekend, and I start to lay out concepts, and everyone in the room pretends like they know what I'm talking about. Because no one wants to admit they don't know what you're talking about. And it takes one brave soul to say, could you explain that acronym? I didn't get that. Thinking that everyone in the room is good, and everyone in the room is kicking them under the table and writing notes. Thank you. They didn't want to admit. So I would strongly encourage you, if you're making a presentation to your board, you're going to have some boards like I have, some just phenomenally smart people, talented business people who really know their stuff, but pretending like everyone in the room knows the answer to what you're doing, knows the acronym, knows the new FDIC ruling, knows that. No, it's a mistake. What are we always taught to speak even when we communicate in marketing? At a 7th grade level. Why? Because we want to make sure that we explain in detail and lay the foundation. So I'd strongly encourage you to do that. Don't pretend that everyone in the boardroom knows what you're talking about, because they don't. And I'll be one of those that admits, in my 15 years of being on the board, every time I'm writing to the board member next week, what's this acronym? I just, you hear, bank boards are full of acronyms. I just got to, and banks are full of acronyms, and you all know what I'm talking about. But I think that's a great way to present, is be very, very clear and act as though they don't know. You can always say, you may all know this, but I just want to make sure I'm setting the baseline or the foundation.
Perfect. I love that. I want to switch gears for a little bit, because I want to touch on your big strength, right? Strategic branding. So tell me what that means to a bank and its employees.
Great. Well, a brand, at its essence, most people think it's a product, or they think it's a logo. They think it's an identity that they see. They think it's a color palette. And yes, all those things are what informs a brand. But a brand is nothing but a promise. That's all it is. It is a promise, and it's a promise you never break with whoever you're making that promise to. I always say it's a pinky swear. Did you ever do this when you were a kid?
I do that now with my 9-year-old. Yeah.
Pinky swear. I always tell people, I can remember, he's probably not listening, Danny Cave. Danny Cave was the first one. He was 5 years old and broke that pinky swear with me and told everyone about a girl that I thought was really cute. And so I'm still embarrassed to this day when I think about it. But that's how important that you don't get that trust back. I've never forgotten that. Sorry, Danny. Never forgotten that as long as I lived. We forget that about a brand. A brand is a relationship. It's a promise. It's trust that you're developing with the consumer, and you can't break that trust. And I'll tell you, it was perhaps a little easier to break that trust with someone like me, a baby boomer, or someone like a Gen Y, or someone like a Gen X, maybe even a millennial. but not their little sister or little brother who's now not so little and driving our marketplace, the Gen Z. If you break a promise with a Gen Z, you'll never get them back. There's no getting them back. There's a good chance if you break a promise with me as a brand and I call and I say, hey, what's wrong with this? Or I write a review, the quickest way to destroy a brand right here, this little thing, the brand destroyer, depending upon what social networks you're on. There's a good chance you can gain that trust back by performance and continue. Not Gen Z. We never play with Gen Z. We never, once we lose their trust, that trust is gone. And I think that's going to be follow on generations. So when we talk about strategic branding and designing a brand or designing a positioning that fits with our brand, that really helps, in this case, maybe the consumer understand who we are and what we are and what we stand for, we need to be very sure that that's what we stand for because they're going to hold us accountable as they should. And then how we position ourselves strategically is important. And I'm constantly amazed at the brands that are like Walmart. Oh, cheap prices, cheap. No, their positioning is always low prices, always. Such a great positioning. 4 words, the same word twice. Always low prices, always. They're about cheap prices. No, they're not. They're about value. Value is what the consumer is seeking, not the cheapest price. Strategic branding is about understanding that. Sam Walton, if you've never read the story, I highly encourage you to read the story of Sam Walton and his concept of value and why that's so important to the brand. Yes, you can get low prices, always low prices, always. Of course you can, but it's not about the price. It's about the value, and that's the strategic nature of it. And as long as I'm on positioning, let me share my favorite that I believe is strategically right on the money. This is my favorite all time, and believe it or not, it's not B2C. It's not business to consumer. It's business to business. It's BASF. We don't make the brands you love. We make the brands you love better. I love that. That is nailing it. If I had have created that, that's a drop the mic. I'm out. I'm done. My career's over. I'm done. But I just love what that says. We don't make the brands you love. We make the brands you love better. And I think that's a very powerful strategic positioning. You now know what they do. You come to them expecting that. I've got this great brand, but consumers are asking me for more. Help me make them better, make them fit. That to me is strategic branding. We're thinking about who are they, what are their needs. They are paramount. Everything they need is far more important than the money we're trying to make on this. Yes, we've got to be fiscally responsible to our business, but strategic branding isn't about how much money you can make by creating something people will just buy. It's about meeting a consumer in their moment of need. It's about solving their problem and being a resolution for that problem that they can then trust time and time and time again that you'll deliver on. And I'm sorry, I should get off my soapbox. I just get a little carried away.
No, Craig, my big takeaway from everything you just said was you said we're talking about establishing trust and solving a problem, all of these things that make the brands. This is our people too, right? Yeah. These are our tellers and our frontline personnel. They are our brands.
Yes, you could not be. You asked me, what's the great part about being on a board? It's that. It's the frontline individuals. It's the fact of how often you get to watch them step up and step in to the brand and represent the brand and how much they buy into why they're there to serve. And what PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, was a classic example of that. And I know many of you listening to this know this from watching your own individuals. That first round, we were one of the few banks in Oregon that delivered on 100% of everyone that asked it. However, second round, a whole lot of people that couldn't get it first round at their bank because who knows, too busy to what it came to our bank. They're not our customer. They're not it. It took every teller, every person on the staff, 16-hour days, working weekends, and we met every single one of them, 100% of the people, including people who bank at other banks who would never be a part of our bank, but they needed it. And our people stepped up and said, we're going to help you. We're going to get you there. when you sit on a board and see that, you know you're on the right board with the right people and the right people on the front lines. And that just thrills us to no end.
I love that. That's heartwarming. And I have to share the pinky promise thing. I once told my daughter when she was younger than 9 that if you broke a pinky promise, you could never eat cookies again for the rest of your life. A solid disciplinary system then that I made her a pinky promise to do things for a year. It worked. So I can't cook that enough. So unfortunately, we are starting to run out of time. I feel like I could talk to you forever though about all of these things. If you could share one thing with our listeners, one piece of advice, whether it's about a board perspective or strategic branding or anything else you want it to be, what would you share with our listeners?
I think I'd go back to the consumer. No matter what your position in the bank, and I'd say especially if you're a compliance, remember, this is all about a consumer. This is all about someone who desires and needs our services. And the rule of thumb, rule number 1, the consumer is always right. Rule number 2, whenever you're thinking they're not, go back to rule number 1. Bottom line is, it is all about the consumer. That's also rule number 1. That's what I mean by that. The point is, it's about them and where they're going. As you well know, we're experiencing BaaS, fintechs, embedded finance, neobanks. Why? Because they're consumer driven. I know this just from going through the natural and organic. When I got into the natural and organic category, very few consumers, mainstream consumers, were buying natural and organic products because, rightly so, organic was much, much more expensive at the time in the late 80s, early 90s when this started to happen. And then it became more affordable and more affordable. And now it's almost impossible to walk in anywhere and not only find organic and organic fresh, but to find gluten-free and something that fits the vegan lifestyle, the vegetarian. I mean, we've changed our entire way of food, but who changed it? The consumer. It was the consumer demanding that. It was the consumer going, hey, what's in this anyway? I don't think I want to eat that. That's what drove it. And the same is happening in banking. As you well know, Apple and Starbucks, and go down the list of banks and PayPal and Venmo, and go through the list of those who are either in a BaaS opportunity or an embedded finance. Where's that being driven? By consumer. I mean, there's literally data that the consumer doesn't want to tap their credit card getting out of an Uber. That's too much work. Tapping, unfathomable to a freaking baby boomer. I'm sorry, but too much work. But they're right, because they're right. That's what they want. They want to get in, they want to get out, and we've accommodated a way for them to do that through fintech services. And I just think that is so important for us to remember. Please be aware, it's always about the consumer. That's who you're serving, and their needs are paramount. And if you're doing that, you'll find yourself really rewarded greatly.
I love that. And that's all our compliance advice too. So I love that, Craig. Thank you for visiting with me today. I had such a good time.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And thank you for letting me finally break out the Christmas sweater.
Yeah.
The ugly Christmas sweater. And for joining me in that endeavor. And we had a little fun.
We did. So happy holidays from Craig and I, everyone at the Bankers Alliance and Banking Matters families. That's Banking Matters.